Greetings, Skepticism here. In today's video, we will be discussing the ideas of one Vandana Shiva. If you haven't heard of Miss Shiva, you should know she's an overpaid mouthpiece for anti-GMO propaganda. And while today's video is a bit short, I feel it perfectly captures the gist of Shiva's arguments, without all the necessary filler. Let's get to it, shall we?
The very idea of GMOs is a death knell for biodiversity.
Whoa, cutting right to the chase, are we? A death knell to biodiversity, eh? Funny. I figured requiring less land for higher yields would have been good for biodiversity, but hey, I'm not a farmer, so what do I know? Oh wait, you're not a farmer either? Figures.
Biodiversity means the integrity of life.
That's not what biodiversity means, at all. Biodiversity is the diversity of living organisms within an ecosystem. The word itself is pretty self-explanatory. It has nothing to do with the sanctity of life or whatever spiritual quality you want to attach to nature.
GMOs mean appropriating life to own it and patent it.
You are aware that GMO seeds aren't the only seeds that are patented, right? And what's with this owning the world's food conspiracy bullshit? For one, organic food is readily available for you and your crunchy muppets. For another, it's not as if the organic industry is just giving its food away. Quite the contrary. As their sneaky marketing schemes pimp organic as a superior choice, organic companies can make a killing selling these products for exorbitant prices.
And because there are patents related to GMOs, and the only reasons GMOs are being introduced is to own seeds and collect rents and royalties.
You know, I'm probably going to mention this again, but anti-capitalist sentiments are rather tiring from someone who charges tens of thousands of dollars to tell people something they've already heard on the internet. It's ever more tiresome when that someone is espousing total bullshit.
Corporations push the handful of crops that they have genetically modified. So you can see in the last few years, cropping systems have been reduced to corn and soya and cotton and canola.
Funny, last time I went to the grocery store there was certainly quite a bit of variety, including organic and conventionally farmed produce. You could say there was quite a bit of biodiversity.
When we have cultivated and eaten thousands of crop varieties and species.
And still do, barring some varieties that no longer exist, either through hybridization or failure to sell, something that GMOs have very little to do with.
The uniformity and monocultures that are being pushed by GMOs are driving out diversity directly. But they are driving out diversity because instead of using less more efficiently, which they always claim, that land we are using more efficiently, they're having to invade the Amazon, they're having to invade the grasslands of Argentina for a very expansive and wasteful agriculture.
You are aware that deforestation for agriculture predates GMOs, right? I'm going to assume that an adult of your advanced age is aware of this, and is just lying through your teeth so that morons throw money at you. And, as I've mentioned, many GMO varieties are designed in such a way as to require less land for greater yields.
And when you spray Roundup on Roundup-ready crops, you are literally killing food and diversity.
If a farmer is spraying Roundup on crops that produce their own Roundup, he's really just wasting his money. That's ultimately his choice. The fact of the matter is that there is no evidence to suggest that the traces of Roundup present in Roundup-ready crops is sufficient to cause harm to human beings, and even if a farmer is practicing such redundant overkill, it very little changes the effects of Roundup on the human body, which are essentially nil.
When you plant Bt cotton seeds, you are killing the bees and the pollinators and the soil organisms.
Bt is a naturally occurring pesticide, which is merely enhanced in Bt-producing GMOs. The only creatures affected by this are those that directly attempt to consume the plant. There is little evidence to suggest that it harms pollinators, and given that the colony collapse, which occurred earlier this decade, is very nearly reversed and bees are again on the rise, it would seem that BT has done little to harm their numbers.
GMOs are a recipe for ecocide.
And your efforts to prevent the spread of crops such as golden rice are tantamount to genocide. Personally, even if your claims were true, I would gladly risk a little biodiversity if it meant that children weren't suffering to death. But your priorities are so fucked that you'd rather protect some non-existent sanctity of life than protect the lives of your fellow Indians who stand to benefit greatly from crops such as golden rice.
But they're not just a recipe for ecocide and the destruction of biodiversity, they are also killing our farmers. 284,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide. Most of them in the areas where cotton is grown. 95% of the cotton is now genetically modified, owned and controlled by Monsanto. The farmers are dying because Monsanto is making profits by owning life which it never created but pretends to create. That is why we need to reclaim the seed. That is why we need to get rid of GMOs. That is why we have to stop patenting of life.
So I actually decided to look up why Indian farmers are committing suicide. It would seem that the reasons are conflicting, but they largely revolve around crop failure due to drought, illness, and property disputes, just to name a few. Lesser reasons seem to include financial burdens related to crop loss and property debts. There also have been some investigations into mental health issues as a pre-existing condition for some farm families. Funnily enough, GMOs, and Monsanto specifically, are only mentioned by fringe lunatics who offer you as a source of information. You know, Miss Shiva, I don't think you're stupid. On the contrary, I think you're very smart and very clever. A dangerous mix for someone who's a blatant fucking liar. As for you, my beloved audience, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any ideas for topics for me to take on, you can send them to me via private message on YouTube or at my Twitter and Facebook accounts, links below. Chatelet.